Hey guys, welcome back. Joe Brunsman, Insurance Broker to the Stars. I think I'm getting low-key Reddit famous because I now have about one new MSP a day reaching out to me saying, hey Joe, can you take a look at my insurance policy, make sure I'm good to go? And because I cannot do insurance for everybody, I wanted to make a video so that way at least you guys got a fundamental understanding of the most common mistake that I'm actually seeing for MSPs as it relates to their insurance. Before we begin, of course, you know this is my latest book, Damage Control, Cyber Insurance Compliance, guaranteed to make your kids go to sleep at night. If you want to download it, that's the link where you can get it for free. All right, so what's the most common error that I'm seeing? Just not having appropriate tech E&O insurance to begin with, or just not even having E&O insurance. So that's a problem. As I've said before, just because it wasn't your fault doesn't mean it's not your problem. And I think these latest supply chain attacks, without diming out any vendors, I think we all know who we're referring to here. You can do everything right. Your clients can do everything right, and you can still get hit with ransomware. You can still have a problem. So please, please make sure that you are taking your insurance seriously and you are doing your due diligence to make sure it's exactly what you need. Next, you have to keep in mind, we are technical people. So when we see a problem, what do? We go to a technical response, right? Something happened at a client. First thing, okay, what was in our contract, right? That's a technical response. Did we check all the appropriate boxes? Technical response. Your clients, the whole reason that they're hiring you is because they don't understand any of this stuff. They don't want to understand it. If they did, they would open their own MSP or they'd come and work for you. So generally, in the absence of technical knowledge, you will have an emotional response because we're all humans. So with that, don't think that a technical response will outweigh an emotional response. All right? And just keep in mind, roughly 2/3 of claims in the E&O world have nothing to do with the quality of work of professional. It's the people hired you because they don't actually understand what you're doing. They don't want to understand that. All they know is something bad happened, emotional response, get an attorney, file a lawsuit. So please, please keep that in mind. And next, what are the big brains saying? You don't have to trust me. That's fine, right? I am a little guy in a bubble right here on the internet, just shouting into the breeze. But what do the big brains do and the guys at the insurance companies? Well, we have entire insurance companies just refusing to offer E&O insurance to MSPs anymore. We also have the insurance companies sticking around going, you know what, with our teams of attorneys, I mean, hundreds of them, looking at all of the case law in each specific industry, in each specific jurisdiction, plus the actuaries running all the numbers. They're saying, this is getting dangerous. We have to make this more expensive to stay profitable in this particular line. The dangers are coming. The lawsuits are coming. The lawsuits are already being filed. Trust the big brains. They have, compared to us, infinite resources to look at this stuff. And they're saying, this is a problem. It's getting a lot more dangerous. Now, what would be just as bad as not having tech E&O insurance? It's having the wrong insurance. It's arguably just as bad. And what do I mean by this? I mean having both an E&O policy and then possibly having a cyber policy, or having an E&O policy and then saying, okay, I need a cyber policy on top of this. What does that likely mean? It means you likely got this from your general insurance agent. He doesn't actually know what he's doing. He just got an E&O policy because you said you needed one, and then there you go. What are these generally? They're going to be miscellaneous E&O policies. So you'll know this because it'll say, you know, something like professional liability or whatever policy on the top. And then if you look at the endorsements, so that long list of things that hopefully you have read, there'll be something in there about like technology services endorsement. And that's how I know every time I see one of those, I'm like, you got this from your general agent. This probably isn't going to cover what you're actually doing. So why is this bad? Well, a little bit of background knowledge on the insurance side. I promise this is important. As much as you probably don't want to know this, it really is actually good for you. So you render some type of professional service to your client. Your client then says, hey, there was an error or omission in you rendering those services, resulting in a wrongful act against the client. And because of that, they're going to bring a claim against you. Okay, so professional services, wrongful act, claim. Now, Let's look at the definition of professional services in one of these miscellaneous E&O policies that has that little technology services endorsement in there. This was an example. Solely in the performance of services as, so they're narrowing this down, computer consultant, management consultant, telecommunication consultant, and staffing services. You'll notice, because those words are not in bold, they're not further defined, but I think it's pretty safe to say that an MSP, or what we could just broadly construe as an MSP, they're going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff that falls outside of those definitions. Now, I don't blame MSPs for this. Why? Well, up until a couple of years ago, even having E&O insurance was, I guess it was good to have, but probably not a necessity as it is now. And, my industry does a terrible job on educating people. So you just wouldn't know, quite frankly. So I don't blame you for it. That's why I make these videos, to try and keep all you guys safe out there. So just remember, if you go professional services wrongful act claim, turn that around. If you have a claim which alleges a wrongful act for services not covered under that definition of professional services, you are unlikely to be covered for that claim, or you could face some partial declination of coverage. It's just not a place you really want to go when there's a much easier solution to this problem. Now, here's an example of professional services from a true Techy E&O policy. Professional services means technology services and internet services for others for a fee. What does technology services mean? It means the following, and you'll notice kind of the key term there: including but not limited to computer consulting, system analysis, installation, programming, data processing, system integration, software development and design, sale and distribution of technology products, disaster recovery, record retrieval, on and on and on and on. You'll see for an MSP, that would be much more appropriate than what we saw previously. And internet services there, you can pause the video here if you'd like to read through those particular definitions. But just looking at it, be like, that's way broader and it's way longer, so that, really I think it's much safer. This is what I would want if I was an MSP. Another reason why having an E&O policy and a cyber policy at the same time is probably a bad idea is these things called mutually repugnant other insurance clauses. So what are they and what do they mean to you? Well, if you have an E&O policy and you have a cyber policy, one, you probably shouldn't have that, and the underwriter for the cyber probably screwed up, because they should know that as an MSP, you should actually have a Techy E&O policy. But that notwithstanding, the problem you're going to run into is each of those policies could potentially cover a client suing you after some type of cyber event. Why? Cyber policy, cyber event, it's got third-party coverage on it. Your E&O policy, that, not a Techy E&O policy, just a regular E&O policy, they could allege damages for professional services rendered. Now, assuming that the definition of professional services on that just basic E&O policy even covers what they're alleging and what you did, now you got a problem, because you have this thing called an other insurance clause. And in both of those policies, you're going to have some little paragraph in there which basically says, if there's anything on this policy that's covered by a different policy, right, an other insurance policy you have, it's the other guy that's going to pay for it. So if they both have those clauses in there, you end up in this infinite loop of stupidity of insurance companies just pointing the finger at the other guy. And then you're going to be stuck in the middle going, at what point do I actually get insurance? So the courts have really struggled with how to deal with this. And it appears really a lot of it's jurisdiction dependent and fact pattern dependent. But what you would have to be prepared for is generally the following. And that's going to be, you're only going to get as much insurance as you would have on any one of those policies as they stand alone. But you may end up having to pay both deductibles for only the highest limit policy that you have. Now, what is the deductible? That's a monetary value of risk, right? That's how much risk you're willing to take on board. Generally, E&O policies have much higher deductibles than cyber policies for a very specific reason. So you don't want to end up taking on board a lot more risk than you already thought existed to begin with. Next, and this is probably way worse, defending claims with multiple insurance companies. What a disaster. I would not want to do this. Now, if you have something that's painful, the last thing you want to do is add complexity to pain. So please do not add complexity to a painful process to begin with. You're going to be dealing with now multiple egos and multiple people. You're going to have differences in defense strategy. So each insurance company could have a completely different path on what they think is the best way to deal with that claim. You could have one insurance company going, you know what, we're just going to settle this case and we're going to bounce. And then you could have the other insurance company going, no, we're going to defend this case. We think we can win. And then you're going to be stuck in the middle, right? How do you even deal with that? Next, you're going to have differences in policy language. There's something called hammer clauses where could you settle the claim with insurer consent? What happens if you don't settle the claim with insurer consent? Are you then on the hook for some percentage past that point of what they would have offered or some percentage of what the ultimate award is going to be to the plaintiff? It just gets infinitely complex, and it's just honestly a giant pain you don't want to deal with. You could also be dealing in differences with limits and sublimits, and you're going to have to deal with all of these extra complexities. So I once talked to a business owner, not my client, who actually dealt with this. And he said ultimately it was just so frustrating and time consuming and annoying that he ended up just hiring his own attorney on his own dime just to deal with the other insurance company attorneys to figure out all this stuff. But it still had an impact on his life. He still had to talk to his attorney to talk to the other attorneys to try and deal with this particular issue. And all of this is likely avoidable if you just have an appropriate Techy policy. So just have the right insurance policy. There's a reason that Techy policies exist and why MSPs can get those. All right, some considerations for you moving forward here. If you're in this position, if you have a Techy policy, or if you only have that really rudimentary kind of basic E&O policy, I would highly encourage you, just do a quick Control F, look at the definition of professional services, technology services, et cetera, et cetera. You need to make sure that you're appropriately covered there. Please do not skip this step. It could be the most important 10 seconds in the history of your business, because that could be the difference between a claim being covered, a claim not being covered, a partial declination of coverage, so forth and so on. Next, if you do deal with this basic kind of rudimentary E&O policy, not a tech E&O policy, and you've got a cyber policy, look at the other insurance clause in there. Finally, I would just say, make my industry do our jobs. What is most of the insurance industry doing? Most of the insurance industry is application comes in, insurance guy sends it to the underwriter, never even reads it, never takes a look at it. Then what happens? Quote comes in, insurance guy doesn't really read it except, hey, how much does it cost? Then they send the quote to the business, right? This could be your MSP in this case. And then you're not reading it because you've never been educated on it. So even if you read all the way through it, a lot of it you wouldn't really know how it actually applies in practice. And so because of that, it could be a bad day for you. So please start asking those questions. Start looking at those definitions. Read through your policy. Seek out people who actually specialize in this particular area. Do not just assume that your insurance guy actually knows what he's doing, because generally insurance people, I will say, we tend to not be the smartest and we tend to be somewhat lazy. So please make our industry do our jobs. Ask those tough questions. Compare definition of professional services to the services that you're rendering. Start asking those questions. Hey, could this be covered? Do I have a problem here? What am I missing? What other types of insurance are being offered out there that I don't have? Do you think that those are reasonably appropriate for my business to carry? Please start asking those questions. And of course, if you're ever in doubt, please seek competent legal counsel. With that in mind, if you found this useful, if you learned something today, like, share, comment, subscribe, share this with your buddies in the MSP community, your fellow business owners there. Make sure that they're staying out of trouble. Right above me, you'll see another video that the wonderful YouTubes will recommend to you. And over there, if you click on my face, you can subscribe to my channel. With that, stay safe.